Hi everybody, this video will explain how to set up moving targets within Unreal. So what I want to do is show you what the final goal is for everything, and then we will come back and lay out how to set up the target and a couple of different variety of options. So I'm just going to play here. This is the custom first person setup that we have done before, movability, and then we can shoot a projectile out. I've set up some blueprints to where if I shoot a target, it'll fall down. So it's an on overlap. So that way the custom projectile that we've set up will work properly. And we have a lot of variety that we can do. We can of course just scatter them in different ways and allow us to shoot them and knock them down. See if I can reach up there. Yep. So we can change the height and position of them. Each one is a blueprint, so it can just be moved around, rotated around however we want to, and it'll still work properly. We can do a whole lot of other things. We can set up some simple rotating, what's called perpetual rotation in Unreal. Each one of these targets will still work properly, but they are all individually rotating around an object. We can do some other things by setting up some more blocking zones and whatnot. So when you shoot things, you have to wait until it gets through the little open holes and you can shoot them. There you go. Then we can have varying speeds. We can have a lot larger combinations of these. Things that are rotating in opposite directions, making it more complex to shoot with. Trying to shoot some of those targets up there. They do all work. There you go. Of course, the faster they're moving, the harder it is to shoot. There we go. So those are some things and goals we're going to talk about of how to set up some moving and rotating targets. From the previous video, I've set up a blueprint with just the target base, and then I've set a blueprint with just the rotating part of the target. So we're going to start here with the rotating part and set up that interaction, and then we're going to connect it together with a higher blueprint to the base, so that way everything will work individually but also be synced up to make it easier to move around. So one thing I am going to need is a box collision. So if I do add component, type in box, and find a box collision. And for this one, I'm just going to come up here, get it from a side view, move it up and kind of scale it into place. I don't want this box collision to be too big. I do want to have some skill level in order to hit the target. So you can make it as small as a smaller piece or outer circle, whichever one. But that's pretty good. So basically that's what the projectile is going to hit and overlap in order for it to register and play the animation. Alright, so over here in the event graph, that's it for the viewport. We just need a box collision and then the target that's going to animate. So in the event graph, come over here to a blank area. I'm going to make sure my box is selected, and I'm going to right click and choose begin overlap. Okay. What I'm looking for is add on component begin overlap. There are ways to set this up with the on hit component. So if I right click and choose on hit, add on hit component, but with the way that we've set up our projectile, the on hit component does not work as default. What will work is the on component begin overlap with that box collision. So that's the first thing. So basically when projectile hits this, it's going to play the animation. So if I hit play or the execute button and drag out from that, I'm going to choose timeline. I'm going to choose add timeline. I'm going to go ahead and rename this target rotate small 1, I guess, or A. We talked to tell the other one A. So it's a good idea to name your timelines. So execute goes to play of the timeline, and then I'm going to double click on the timeline. See if I can, whoop, I don't want to pull that in. Drag this out so we can have a larger screen here. Move our details panel over. If I double click on the timeline, it opens up in a separate sub tab. And what I want to do is click on the add float track. I just need a one value animation. It's going to be one of the rotate angles over time. So horizontally is time, the vertical axis is rotate. If I go back to my rotate, I kind of need to know how far to rotate this. And rotate this back, I think it's around 98 degrees is what I did for the previous small one. So it is also good to understand what rotate angle that is. If I open up my details panel a little more, I'm rotating on the y-axis. Go back to 0 for right now. So back in my timeline, I'm going to right click over here near 0 and choose add key to curve float. And then I'm going to come up here, it says time, and choose 0 and 0. So time is 0, value is 0. It means it's going to start with this initial rotate on time frame 0. I want this to be a pretty quick animation, so about half a second in, it's going to fall over. So right click there and choose add key to curve float. And it's not always perfect, so you will need to click on time and choose 0.5. And then my value is going to be 98. Okay, so it's going to rotate down 98 degrees from its original standpoint. Let's hit our zoom horizontal and zoom vertical, and that should show me my curve, which right now is just a constant velocity. I do need to change my length to 0.5 so that my timeline as default is not going to be set to 5 seconds. It's going to be set to 0.5 seconds. I'm also going to come in here and see if I can right click and rename that track. I'll say target rotate value or something like that. Okay. So 0 to 0.5 is my time, 0 to 98 is my value. Go back to my event graph, and that float value graph is now titled target rotate value. But it's just a timeline. It's not associated with any value or attribute of my target now, so it's not going to rotate anything here. So I need to tell it to assign it to an object or to an attribute. So if I drag off of update, I'll drag off over here further. I'm going to choose set actor relative rotation. Okay. Set actor relative rotation. Off of target rotate value, I'm going to drag and I'm going to choose make rotator. This is what assigns it to a specific attribute or XYZ. So if I go back to the viewport and rotate this, I know this needs to be on the y-axis. So back in my event graph, I just need to hold down control and click on where this rotate value is assigned to X or roll. And I want to drag that from X to Y. I'm holding down control when I do that. And then all I have to do is change the return value, connect that up to new relative rotation. Alright, so let's hit compile. One other thing we want to make sure we do is go to the box and box collision and go down to collision presets, and let's make sure that says overlap all dynamic. Okay, and let's compile and let's minimize that. Let's drag our target just to test this out into our scene here, and let's hit play. Let's go find it. Here it is, and let's try to shoot it. Here we go. So it falls over. So it's pretty good. What I wanted to show you is what I've done over here with these two. But before I do that, I want to show you how I get the combined blueprint. So I have my base blueprint, and I can come in here and kind of move my base, and then I can drag my rotating target in here, try to match it up, but it's just going to be more complex, and I have to do that every time I want to add the target to it. So instead, we're going to create another blueprint. So if I right click down here and choose new blueprint actor class, BP target small combined, and we'll do A since we're considering, or trying to stay consistent here. Alright, so this new combined one, close that for now. I'm going to drag my base, and then I'm going to drag my target small. The target small is the one that has the animation on there. Now I just need to come in here and move this up so it rotates properly. So basically it'll rotate based off of that hinge. There we go, and that should be good for what I want it to do. And that's it, so let's do compile. Alright. So with this combined blueprint, if I drag this in here, it'll already snap to the bottom how I want to. The pivot points are there, and it's already combined. So now if I hit play, go find it, and shoot it, it's going to fall over. So it's exactly what I can do, what I want to. The easiest part about the combined blueprint is I can duplicate this as many times as I want. I'm holding down Alt when I click and drag there. And every one will work independently because it's all kind of like a nested blueprint system. So all of my animation and interactive work is in the individual target small blueprint, but then my combined blueprint is where I actually put together the base and the rotating target, the one with the interactive part to it as well. So it's an easy way and effective way to set up blueprints. So the next thing I want to show you is looking at that timeline that we just created, and I'm just going to open them up and show you the adjusted timeline for each one of these. So if I go hit play, this far left blue one, the small one, is the same exact timeline as what I just showed you creating. So basically it works. Go back in there and I'll show it again. But it's just not that natural. It's just a consistent speed. It doesn't look that natural. But watch what happens when I hit the second one here. The timing is a lot more natural. It has some bounce as it hits the ground. I'll do it again with the red one here. See, it hits the ground and bounces. But as default, the timeline we created is not that natural. So what we want is a more natural timeline. And all we're doing is just advancing and adjusting what that timeline looks like. So small combined, and then this is my second one here. So this, find what I did with it. Print small combined. Oh, whoop, I'm backing up. So let me back up here. That's my combined one. So I need to go to small and then small improved. Here we go. There we go. All right. So they have the same exact blueprint setup. The difference between the two is the timeline. So there's my original timeline, 0 to 0.5. But here is my adjusted timeline. So here's how we can make the timeline more natural as it is playing the animation. It's a slow start, and then it's going to speed up to get to the 98 degree angle. It's going to bounce back, hit the ground again, bounce back a little bit, and then stop a little bit later than what we did to begin with. So here's how we can make our adjustments to make the time more natural looking. So I'm going to go back to our targets. I'm going to duplicate this so you can see the difference here. And we'll say A1, that's fine, that'll be good there. So let's open this back up, and we're going to go into that timeline again and refine this. So we refine this by making more keyframe points and then adjusting the way the curve looks. So one thing we can do is drag select on the curve points and then right click and choose auto, and that will create smooth tangents. So that makes if the tangent or the curve is horizontal, that means it's slower. If the curve is more vertical, that means it's faster. So what I actually want to do is take this corner point, and I want it to be fast in the end, so I'm going to drag this down. So it starts slow and then ends fast. So I also kind of want to make it bounce a little bit. So I'm going to come over here to the right of my last keyframe and right click and choose add key, and we'll do maybe 0.55 for the time, and we'll do negative, or not negative, but maybe like 75 for the value. So it's going to bounce back up. And then about the equal distance over, I'm going to right click and add a keyframe again. We'll do 0.6 for the time and 98 back for the value. So that's going right back to the same value. I'm going to let it bounce a second time. So we'll do like 0.65, 0.63, a little quicker time. And we'll do, I don't know, 88, something like that. Then we'll come back a little bit further down again, add another key, and we will do 0.65, that's good. Or 0.66, make it even. And then back to 98. Okay. We just need to make adjustments for some of these curves over here. If I go try to make an adjustment to this curve, it's going to adjust both sides, so that's not very natural, and it won't animate how I want to. So what I can do is select all of these curve points here, the keyframes, right click and choose break. What that'll do is it'll allow me to adjust one side of that tangent, which is the incoming curve or outgoing curve, different from the other one. So now if I come in here, I want to make it a sharp out tangent, which means it'll be faster for when it hits the ground area, which is the higher value. So I'm just adjusting each time it hits the ground to be fast, and then each time it's reaching the higher element or up vertically, it's going to be slower. So I want to change my length to whatever my last position is, 0.66 for my length. And then I can do zoom to fit horizontal, zoom to fit vertical. Just deselect everything and then do zoom horizontal and zoom vertical. So now I have a much more natural curve. Let's do compile. That's the only thing I'm changing. So here's my change in variety here. I'm not going to add the combined one. I'm just going to show you the difference between the two. Okay, let's go find it again. So this one right here is consistent timing, not very natural. This one, I have a good bounce, and it's more natural timing as well. So that's another easy way to add more believability to your animations, is to adjust the timeline, add some bounce to it, speed it up in areas, slow it down in areas. So I've really just done the same exact thing, same exact steps to set up my small target, my middle target, and my tall target. The only difference I really did with my middle target and tall target is it's moving a larger distance away from the original. So my middle target is only falling down to like 95 degrees, and then my tall target is falling down to like 92 degrees. And the middle target takes a little bit longer to fall because it is taller. The tall target takes a little bit longer to fall compared to the middle because it's a little longer of an object. So if I go look at that BP target tall, my timeline for the tall one is 0.9 seconds, and it is falling down 92 degrees instead of 95 or 98. So as something has a longer motion, taller motion, it's going to animate slower, and it's going to fall down further. So we have to make the adjustments in the animation to make it look natural. Alright, so then you can just scatter all of these blueprint combined versions. So there's like a medium combined one. I've just rotated them around. Here is the tall combined one. There's the small combined one. And they'll all work in here. If I rotate them all around in different angles, they'll all still work. If I go hit play over here to my area, and if I shoot them, they'll all still work with all the different areas here. Okay. Alright, so one final thing we can do is add some perpetual rotation motion, so that way when I'm playing, they can spin around. And all I'm really doing is just parenting objects together there. I think we will wait for another video to talk about more complex motion like horizontal back and forth motion or up and down, kind of more complex motion that's not perpetually rotating or moving in the same direction. We'll use level sequencing to do that. So we'll talk about the level sequencer and how to create more complex motion that way. But with continuously rotating motion called perpetual motion, this is an easy way to do this. So what I need is an object that is going to continuously rotate. I'm just going to use a cylinder here to make it easy. I drag a cylinder from the basic section in here, and I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, and then I'm going to take one of my targets and drag that in and kind of place it on top. Something like that. Maybe I'll move them both up. Okay. So what I need to do is actually parent my target to the cylinder. So let me see if I can reduce these down in my outliner over here so I can see where my, move this down some more, where this cylinder is. I have a lot of cylinders. There we go. So there's that. So I'm going to click and drag this one down here and let go on top of that cylinder. So basically this cylinder can move and be parented to the target's going to be parented to the cylinder. So basically as the cylinder rotates, the target will rotate as well. Alright, so let's move this up here. So what I need to do with this cylinder is just tell it to continuously rotate as the scene starts to play. So with this cylinder selected, if I click on Add Component and type in Rotating Movement, okay, it's a very similar rotating movement, the same exact command really as what we did for the projectile to rotate around. And what this means is in the rotation rate, in the z-axis, it's going to rotate this object 180 degrees every second. What I need to make sure I do before I allow it to do this is go back and select the cylinder and change the mobility from static to movable. Okay. So now with the rotating movement, the rotation rate is 180 degrees every second in the z-axis. That is probably going to be the wrong axis, but let's hit play and let's go see what that'll do. Well, it is the right axis here, so we guessed correctly. So as you can see, it's rotating around. The target's rotating with it because it is parented underneath the cylinder. If I hit the target will still work just as I've used the basic standing target. But now it's going to rotate around that existing target. Okay. I can go in and change that rotating movement if I want it to be slower. Let's do 30 degrees, and that's 30 degrees in the z-axis every second, so it'll be a much slower motion. There you go. Or I can speed it up. I can say go back to rotating movement and do 270 or 360. Let's do 360 every second, so it's going to be much faster there. So it's probably going to be really fast for a shooting target. Still work, but you got to shoot a lot of bullets to get that to work. So that's how we can set up perpetual motion. The difference between these is I just added multiple targets to some of these and parented them to the middle cylinder, and then added a support that makes it look natural. So this cylinder isn't floating in the air. This one is rotating in the opposite angle. So the only difference there when I have that selected and select that rotating movement, it's a negative 80 degrees versus like a positive 40 or whatever the value is. These over here, I just added more targets and then put some other objects in front of them to make it more difficult to shoot. So you actually have to shoot through that gap in order for that to work. Or there's just more targets on that shape to hit. So that's some easy ways to set up some basic target interaction with the on overlap with the projectile, and then also how to do some perpetual continuously rotating motion on an object. Alright, so that'll wrap it up for this video.